Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Matters of the Heart and Soul podcast. My name is Janie, one of your hosts, and welcome to a new episode. Today we are talking with Miss Norma Edwards. She has an amazing journey, near-death experience. She's a wisdom keeper. She's actually a pastor. Just so many amazing things. And her book called Awakening, I read it in 2 days and reached out to Norma because she has so much wisdom. And I think there's so much we can learn from her journey. So, welcome to the podcast, Norma.
Hello, hi. I am Norma. Most people are not aware that when you add I am to your first name, you are in fact announcing and declaring your divinity. No one else can say, I am Norma but me. I was born in Guyana, South America, traveled a little bit around the world. And when I was 26 years of age, I had a near-death experience. Of course, in the 70s, nobody knew what that was. So it was just this unusual experience that I was convinced if I ever talked about it, it put me away in a mental institution. So I shut my mouth for 15 years. And those people living around me could not embrace. Particularly, I was married at the time, my husband could not embrace. We may be walking down the street and I would look at a person and I said, oh dear, I wonder if she knows that she's suffering from cancer or some tumor or what have you, because I came back with the ability to see inside of the body. And people couldn't handle that. So you began to lose friends real fast. Mm-hmm. But what actually happened was, it was a Monday morning. I had been on leave. Because I had this pain in my stomach and I just wasn't feeling well. And I took a month off and I was getting ready to return on that Monday morning. I had one child at the time. So I got up and there was the pain again. But having been away for a month, I didn't feel it right to call in sick again. So I deposited my son at the babysitter and I got to work. And throughout the day, I could feel this irritating pain. And then just about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I looked at the clock and it dawned on me that I was having labor pains. I asked to be released and I entered the elevator and there was one other female in the elevator. She was a Hindu woman. I knew she was a Hindu woman because she was dressed that way and she had this beautiful dot. When the elevator stopped, it stopped with a jerk. That's how we did it those days. And all hell broke loose. I collapsed. Since we were close to the hospital, this was in London, we were close to the hospital. She had sense enough to hail a cab. And they helped me into the cab and got me to St. Bartholomew's Hospital in London. When I got there now, I'm on a trolley, excruciating pain. I'm in between consciousness and unconsciousness. And I have this memory of opening my eyes and there's a doctor on each side pushing this trolley. And I'm looking perplexed and they're asking me, well, who are you? What's your name? You know, and they tell me that I have a dead fetus inside of me that I have to get out to there really fast. And that was the last conscious thing that I remembered. And then the next thing I know is I'm on the ceiling. And I'm looking down at my body on an operating table, surrounded by doctors and nurses. And you talk about being confused. That's the most confusing thing I've ever experienced in my life. Because the pain is gone. I feel fine. I'm at peace. There is no pain. There's no ache. And I'm watching how frantic they are, that they obviously think I'm going to die. So now I am thinking, I need to get down there on the floor to let them know that I'm okay. I don't understand why, but I'm okay. They don't need to be in this frantic emergency. One of the things I learned that day is our thoughts are very powerful. Wherever we place our attention, the universe will give us more of it. And the universe does not make an analysis of whether it's positive or negative. You turn your attention there, that's what you'll get. And no sooner I did, I found myself on the floor. And I'm up against between the two doctors, and I'm going, hello, hello, this is me, it's okay. And they couldn't see me, they couldn't hear me. And now I'm even more baffled. And then the thought hit me to show that when we're in that state of consciousness, we are really, truly in a better space for assessment. The thought came to me is, okay, there's something wrong with this picture. The men can't see me. The doctors can't see me because they're men. Let's try the nurses because they're female, you see. So I'm running from one nurse to the other and nobody could see me. And then I watched the image flatline. And I knew what that meant. And I'm staring at it and thinking, I'm not alive. I'm not dead. I'm alive. The equipment must be malfunctioning. And so that when the doctor picked up, I call them paddles. They look like paddles. From the spiritual perspective, I could see the amount of electricity around those paddles. And the thought in my head said, I'm not dead yet, but if they apply that amount of electricity to my body, I will be dead. I am getting out of here. And with that, I went straight through the ceiling.
Wow.
And into a very, very dark, when I say very dark, very, very dark tunnel. Mm-hmm. Interesting thing was, I was not afraid. There was no fear.
Mm-hmm. Did it feel like you were in that dark tunnel a while, or it was quick?
I'm moving like at the speed of light.
Okay.
Really fast. Mm-hmm. And at first, it's kind of like you just can see the two sides. And then I come around a curve. And when I come around a curve, I could see the end of the tunnel. And when I could see the end of the tunnel, I could see this kaleidoscope of light. I mean, colors that we know of in this realm and colors we don't know in this realm. And I'm swiftly approaching it. And as I approach the exit, the kaleidoscope of light turned to crystal clear white light. And I merged. And at the moment when I merged, there are no words, trust me, not in any language, to describe the glory, the peace, the love. It was just absolute. I mean, I just merged. How I explain it is I became love. And now I'm in this place and I'm looking around and it looks like it's a garden, there are trees. And the question in my head is, how does one get around in this environment? And as soon as I think that, I am now moving. But I'm aware that I'm moving when my feet are not touching the ground. And I'm taken to a screen. Big, huge. Even today, we on Earth here have not yet developed a screen that big. And I'm standing at the screen lights up. And it begins to scroll very, very slowly. And then it stops. And then it begins to re-scroll. And I realize the screen is now divided into 3 columns. There's a column on the left, there's a column in the middle, and there's a column on the right. The column on the left is my life that I had just left, the way I had planned it. The column in the middle is going to show me how I have lived it. And initially, the 3rd column was empty. So it begins to scroll very slowly. And I'm watching the things that I got involved with. First, it's childhood. It's coming in sequentially. And I'm watching and I'm observing the things that I have, the life I've just left. And then it stops and it starts to scroll again. And now I'm like around the teenage stage. And I'm observing. And now I'm beginning to observe that the right column has got what looks like a stamp. And the stamp says, objective not accomplished. Objective not accomplished. And it was not judgmental at all. I was highly amused. How could I not have known that there were these objectives on the left-hand side that should have been accomplished? And I lived a whole lifetime completely in ignorance of what I had said. So it was not a judgmental thing. I wasn't standing there going, oh my goodness, I behaved badly or I shouldn't have done that. I was like in awe. How could this possibly have happened? Now, when it got to the last of my 26 years of my life, the screen stopped. And now I'm thinking, what next? Now, when I was a child, I had a lot of questions for pastors and elders. And it literally annoyed them and forced my mother to say, when you go to church, I don't want you to even look at the pastor. Do not talk to him. Don't ask him any questions, because you're asking him questions he cannot answer. And one of those questions was, but Christ said he came that we could have life and have it more abundantly. I said, but people are still dying. He came and he died. What does that mean? And if people are still dying, does that mean that Christ was lying? Oh my God, that got me into serious, serious trouble. And so I decided that I would write my questions in notebooks. And standing there that day, that question came back into my mind. What did Christ mean when he said he came so we could have life and have it more abundantly? And then I found myself moving very swiftly again. And now I come to a Colosseum. It was big Colosseums with huge pillars. And now an even bigger television screen is displayed between the two columns. And it begins to scroll. And as it's scrolling, I can see now that they have dumped 6 past lives.
Wow.
Into the 26 years that I just lived. And I'm now reviewing why maybe I took some of those choices that I did, why I ignored what I should be doing. It was very revealing, very revealing. And when I'm reviewing the lifetimes, I'm also experiencing the energy.
So you're experiencing the emotion of what you're viewing.
Yes.
At that moment. Yes. Okay.
Very much into the emotions. The very first, the second lifetime on there was a lifetime at a time when there was darkness. The earth was really dark, or it might have been night. I don't know, but here we were a bunch of women being led by 2 warriors, and we were all carrying flames in our hands to light the way. And they brought us through a tunnel, and then the tunnel fed out to the ocean. And there were small boats, and we were women and children. And I could glean from what I was being shown that there was war. There was tribal war going on. And the tribe that I belonged to was losing the war. And so they decided they would take the women and the children and put them out to sea with what little food they had. So I hope that they may survive. Because if they survive, we could replenish the community. And they put us out to sea. And the boat I was in were 24 women, and I think about 7 children. The boat capsized, and we all drowned. It's no accident, I think, that now in this lifetime, I do water aerobics in a humongous pool. It used to be 24 of us, one recently passed. And now I am breaking the fear that was registered inside of me of drowning, not only drowning, but knowing that children of mine were drowning alongside me. The next screen took me to, and every screen now, so many years later, I could see why I was taken there, because now my job is to relive and shake all of that fear.
I was going to ask you, like, so you do believe some people who are in this lifetime and there's fears, there's just maybe, like you said, fear of water, fear of drowning, that could be linked to a past life, that something
Usually it is.
happened and you're here to overcome that and clear that.
It is. It is. But I do say to people, be mindful and allow it to rise, because if you go to somebody and they tell you this is what you have to do, you may enter the recovery stage before the soul is actually ready. See what I'm saying? If you allow it to rise, then it rises at the right time. The next screen I observed was I was a warrior myself, male warrior, and we were fighting and experienced what that energy was. As a matter of fact, after I came back and had children, I have 3 sons. I think it really helped me to connect with my sons, having kind of felt that experience of how the male of the species feels, and all that powerful energy that they have, and when it's suppressed. I got an opportunity to feel that very much. Then the next lifetime, I was at the spot where Moses was pulled out of the bulrushes. And I was one of the women who were there. We were bathing and we were washing clothes, washing our hair and bathing. And the basket came, and then the discussion. And I'm experiencing the discussion and the fear, and coming to the agreement that, since the queen don't seem to be able to have children, this might be an answer. And the fear again that if you present this to her, she might not like it, and your life could be at stake, you see, which has taught me about there's some things you may know. It doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to present it, or you have to be very careful how you present it. So I was there when that took place, and then to our pleasure, she accepted, and he became her son. Then I found myself in a cotton field. And I was a child, I would say about 12. And along with my mother, we were picking cotton. I was also very aware that my father was picking cotton kind of like on the next row, but like nobody knew that was my father. And we're picking cotton, and I could hear the hooves, the sound of the hooves of the master man and the horse. And every now and again, I can hear the whip. And I knew that the whip on the back came when the slave could not produce their quota. And now I'm in mortal fear because I know I'm a child and I can't produce my quota. And therefore, I will experience the whip on my back, something that I'd experienced before. And very quickly, I got pulled out of that lifetime. And now I'm the master man, white man, on the horse, wielding the whip. And that one really got my attention. We're all one. And that came to an end, and that kind of shook me. And then the next place they took me was when Paul was taken off the horse and he surrendered to Jesus Christ. And I was one of the people in the crowd that, and it's always been a story in the Bible that has touched me very, very deeply. That first he was about desecrating and killing the followers, and he got that immediate transformation. So then it came to an end, and I'm now wondering what to do with all this emotions that I have now. And then I thought,
yeah, because you just went through, 7 lifetimes of emotions, and you felt all of that.
You felt all of it. You felt the fear, you felt the pain, you experienced it. And then I thought, well, what next? And as soon as I thought, what next? I'm moving again very swiftly. And I come to a river. And when I was a child, we sang this little hymn, yes, we will gather at the river, the beautiful river, gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. There is a river. And I stopped, and the other side of the river, on the other side of the river. I knew there were over 300 people there. And they were all happy to see me. Oh my goodness. And they were laughing and they were smiling and they were clapping. And I could feel the energy of love coming into me. I'm absorbing all this love. Now, some of them I knew because they were people who had recently died in my family. But most of them I did not know. Yet there was this amazing feeling of love. I felt love towards them and I felt the love they sent towards me. And excuse me a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt stepped into the water and she starts moving towards me. And she greets me and she says, how happy she is to see me. She said, but they're sending you back. And I said, why? She says, they're sending you back with a message. And I said, there are millions of people back there. Give one of them the message. Said, wouldn't be as effective as you bringing the message from here. And with that, I found myself falling. Man, the trip back was not as gracious as the trip that I took out. And I literally slammed into my body, excruciating pain. So I moved from being in this gracious, loving, caring pain. And I'm now in a bed in a recovery room. And there are two nurses who are sitting at a table and they're watching my progress. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's okay.
And the one nurse apparently was at church that Sunday while the other one worked. So she's narrating to the other nurse what the sermon was. And it had a lot to do with hell. And I'm thinking, there's no hell. I came from hell into, for some reason, I never call it heaven because I know that there are a lot more dimensions that you have to go to before. That's the waiting room. You know what I mean? But I'm so adamant about this, but I can't speak because I got tubes in my throat, you see. And I'm so adamant about this. And then it dawned on me, but Norma, when you woke up this morning, you believe that. How come you're so adamant now that it's not true? And the conversation came to an end and they turned on a little radio. They turned a little radio on, it was on the table. And classical music poured out of the radio. And now, to my amazement, I am watching the notes. Every note is aligned to a color. Every color is aligned to a number. Every number is aligned to a mathematical symbol. And it's all swirling around. And as they breathe, they're breathing it in. And I am absolutely amazed.
Wow.
And that, of course, led me to doing healing with music. Because
Mm-hmm.
music is a language that speaks directly to the soul. So that comes to an end, and eventually they take me into the ward. In those days, hospitals, it was not like this. You get a room to yourself, 4 of us in this ward, and there was this woman who was in so much pain, and she's crying out and so on. And I said to the nurse, it's okay, she's going home. The nurse probably think I'm crazy. She's in pain. What do you mean she's going home? And before the night was over, she crossed over.
Wow.
And then nurse comes back to me and she says, well, how did you know that? And I said, I don't know. I just knew she was going home. But I think the biggest, as my granddaughter would say, my granddaughter says, there's big, there's huge, grandma, and there's hugeness. The hugeness of the story was the day I left the hospital and stepped out of the doors. It was winter in England, and the trees had no leaves. But I could see in the bark of a tree, I could see the energy moving from the root all the way up to the top, taking in the air and bringing it all the way back down to the root. And I am absolutely amazed. I can see now, now you come out into making your way to the car. I could look at people and I could tell, oh, this person's only got a little bit more time, or this one, I wonder if they can diagnose if this is what is wrong there, because I could see these things, you see. And I'm absolutely amazed. And the journey began with what I call expanded senses, highly expanded senses. In those days, you didn't talk about things like that. You kept it to yourself. And I kept it to myself for 15 years.
Wow.
Did not speak about it until my mother was about to pass. And then she was the very first person I shared it with. And then the effect it had on her, that she got up and danced the day before she left. She got so highly motivated to go home on the other side. But then this amazing journey, to me, yes, I had a near-death experience. And that near-death experience triggered an awakening. And then when I became fully awake now, I had to be taught how to deal with this, how to handle it, when to shut my mouth, because you can't go up to people and go, have you got a will? Do you know you're going to die in 3 weeks? You can't do that.
Yeah.
I learned that the most powerful prayer you could ever utter on the face of this earth is mercy and grace, grace and mercy. And Lord, did I utter mercy and grace millions of times. Sometimes it was a situation where I can go over and say something, but most of the time it was mercy and grace, grace and mercy. And now I am determined, absolutely determined to return to the other side. Yeah. And I actually make a commitment that my intention is to find out the truth about reincarnation and past lives, and for me to be allowed to return back, even if they don't let me stay, but so I can go visit at least one more time. That journey brought 8 spiritual teachers into my life, none of which I went out and sought. They found me. The very first couple was, here we call it Episcopal, in England you call it, oh my goodness, here we say Episcopalians. But anyway, he was a priest, and his wife was she was a gardener. Okay. And while she couldn't see energy the way I did, she could sense it. So she taught me about nature and the love of gardens. And, Britain has a lot of beautiful gardens, and she and I would go and we would visit gardens and so on and so forth. And he taught me about sacredness. In fact, every single one of us is sacred. I don't care, even if you just finished killing somebody over there, there is sacredness inside of you. And the journey began. The journey began. My father, when he died, left me a notebook with 12 books. My father was a Mason. With 12 books and where to find them. I had to import them. And I started off by finding them. It was Lobsang Rampa, Buddhist monk. I started with Lobsang's books and began the journey. And each step of the way. But for me, the journey began with that sacredness. The Anglican Church, that's what I was before. In the Anglican Church, much like a Catholic church, they light candles. The altar is very sacred. And you put that robe on that shuts you down from the rest of the congregation so that you can receive the divine energy while you're on there. So the journey began, and finally, both my husband and I graduated, and we decided to return back to Guyana to give back. some of what we had learned. And by then we had 3 children. And so we returned, and that was a very interesting journey. And that is where I met the husband and wife who opened up my heart and my head and my mind to what it means to walk a spiritual journey.
Yes. And you mentioned them as sister and brother in the book.
That's right. Everybody
now,
called them.
Yeah. Now, before you return to South America, because you talk about how your adjustment after getting out the hospital, you actually went into a depression. Was that happening in London, or was that a little bit of going back home? Okay.
London. Seriously depressed. Seriously. Because what am I going to do with this information? Nobody's going to listen to me. And my husband now just cannot, he just could not handle it. He couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
I didn't even tell my husband I had an ADHD. He was too afraid because he was responding to my reactions, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got seriously depressed, and I actually contemplated suicide. I'm glad you brought me back to there.
Yeah, because you mentioned your son walking in.
Yes.
And you realized
he stopped laughing.
Yeah.
It's not just, it is the symbol that he came in with.
Yes. Can you speak on that?
Yes. He was 5 years old at the time. And that morning I give him a bath, dressed him warm, and send him out to play in the backyard. And, you know, us women, we're amazing. I cleaned the house, don't ask me why. Cleaned the house, and I was in the bathroom with a glass of water in one hand and the pills in the other. And I had taken time to ask nurses in a very, coy way, what does it take to take your life? Can anything take your life? And so on and so forth. And they're giving me this thing as though I'm researching. I'm doing research. Little they didn't know I was doing research, So I had the right amount of pills in the one hand and a glass of water in the other. And I was just saying the last prayer before I swallowed them. And my son came tearing into the bathroom. Mommy, 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 look what I found. And when he opened his hand, he had a half caterpillar, half butterfly in his hand. And I looked at it, and I looked at him, and the voice in my head said, and who will teach him about the mysteries of life when you're gone?
Yeah.
And I turned my head.
That was beautiful. And when I read it, because, the caterpillar, once it becomes the butterfly, it's it's a true transformation. It's a different set of DNA. I recently researched that, and I was like, wow.
And I lifted my son, I took him to the playground, and I sat there. I thought, okay, well, if I can't, they won't let me kill myself. I've got to think of a different way. But what happened with that now, a day or two after that experience, I was taken up. And I don't think I've ever said this in any other podcast. I was taken up to what you'd call the 9th dimension. And there's a council of 9 there. And
I've heard of the Council of 9.
Pray you never have to face them, okay? Or if you have to face them, it's because you've done all
on the good side.
Yes.
On the good side of the council.
You do not want to face that council when they're not on the right side. And it's a semicircle. And I was hauled up before them, and I was told that you're persistent about taking your life. We just want to warn you that if you attempt this one more time, we will allow you to die. But you will have to know that we will have to find a baby's body and slam you into that baby's body with full consciousness. And if you think you got trouble now,
exactly,
that's going to be another kettle of fish. That's where I heard that first. It's going to be another kettle of fish. And then they slammed me back into my body. And I guess that stopped it.
Yeah. The Council of Nine, when you had that experience, were they people? Were they beings? Were they physical?
They were all men. Well, you see, you have to understand. On the other side, they're energy. When your energy is on the other side, you can manifest yourself however you want to. So they manifested themselves in robes, and they were all men.
Okay.
But they scared the bejeebies out of me.
So you came back, and that was the end of that.
That was the end of that. So now I started,
Norma, before we move on, did you fall into this depression because you had experienced this love and felt that merge of the light, and then you come back in this dimension and it's painful, it's a war, it's everything going on, it's hate, it's just all of this.
Even before you get there to war and hatred, we live in a dense, heavy space. That's the first thing. And you feel like you're carrying the weight on your shoulders. And when you've been in this light place where you have a body, but it doesn't have weight, you know, and everything is moved and directed by love, it's kind of hard to explain. So that's what that was part of the depression. The other part of the depression is I would look at people and I would want to tell them, but I'd realize that they won't believe me. Yeah. And the other thing was, it was such a sacred experience for me. I didn't want people pulling it down. Mm-hmm. Because I would think, how am I going to explain to them how sacred this was? Mm-hmm. So then my whole consciousness shifted to, I've got to find a way to get back to the other side, even if it's temporarily, to feel that energy and that love. And I got absolutely committed to that. Yeah. I dug my hands in and I got absolutely connected to that.
How did you do that? How did you get connected to that love energy? How did you do that?
Well, of course, you bring it back with you, you know.
Right.
It's inside of you. And you know it's inside of you. But now you become very aware there's a whole lot of stuff inside of you that's keeping that love from shining through. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's like, I have experienced myself as pure spirit. I've experienced myself as pure love. And here I am in this dense. And one of the things when I stop now, and I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast before, you're pulling things out of me. When I stop and I think about it, but try to think about it now, close my eyes, I could see how many images I have inside of me that will block the beauty of what I have brought back. Can you understand that?
Yes. Yep.
For example, do you know that every image, those eyes of yours, you set your eyes on, you made a picture of? Mm-hmm. Do you know how many millions of images we're carrying on the inside? And I could get in touch with that now and realize, now you see, I get overwhelmed. How am I going to get all this out of the way? Yeah. And breath work is the key. Mm-hmm. Breath work is the key.
Yeah. I totally understand it, because this dimension is very dense, it's very heavy. Very and heavy. I know personally, I have to make sure my environment, what I watch, what I listen to, what I read, it's all in the vibration of love. And because I've experienced that oneness, I've experienced that unconditional love, not in a near-death experience, but in a different experience. And once you experience that, you cannot ever forget it, and you understand what this is really about.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
It's so the journey began.
Yes.
The journey now began to get me back to the other side. What do I need to do? You see,
And basically, what I'm hearing you say, Norma, when you say get back to the other side, it's like, how am I going to heal myself of all this dense,
All this stuff,
heavy
all these
emotion stuff so that
Mhm.
I could be pure, unconditional love in this body on this dimension? Is that right?
That's correct. You got it.
Okay. All
You
right.
got it. And at the time,
Okay.
it seems a monumental task.
Yeah.
It's a monumental task. It's not that easy. So the journey began, and then we left England and we came to Guyana. And as you know in the book, quite by accident, I met brother.
Yes.
And the very first time I met him, I saw him, I could see light around him. My goodness. Wait a minute. Then I'm wondering, did he have the same experience that I did that caused him to be, exuding all this light? And the journey began. The very first question I asked him to kind of open up the thought. He always had a Bible with him. I said, you always carry a Bible? And he said, yes. You got a problem with that? I said, no. And as you know, I had a lot of questions from the Bible. I said, I have a question for you. And he said, what is it? And I said, well, where did the women who became wives to Adam and Eve's sons, where did they come from? And he threw his head back and he laughed. And I thought, I'm asking a serious question and you're laughing?
Yeah.
He just finished laughing. He said, well, where did Adam get his wife? And I said, well, we know the story. He said, well, what makes you think God went out to the business of making women? You think he just made, Eve?
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed so natural. I accepted that so naturally and think, oh my God, how come I didn't think of that? And that journey began. He took me through the Old Testament. And what he has always said is every single holy book has got what that community that is clamoring around it needs. The problem with holy books, he says, is we take a PhD level thesis and we put it in the hands of a third grader to interpret.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's taken literally. It's taken
That's
as a third grader would take it when it's written very metaphorically, parables and hidden
right.
hidden gems. Yeah.
That's right. And so the journey began. And he and his wife, his wife took longer with me with the New Testament. You would think I would have had reading more instructions for the Old. But the Old Testament is all generational, blah, 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 blah. And then he over to her, and she did the New Testament. But the journey was amazing. I don't think he ever answered a question, apart from the first question and really, he didn't answer the question. He made me answer the question.
Yeah, they did that a lot.
Yes.
They would just give you a seed and then let you go figure it out.
Let you go. And the biggest experience with that was when I had the audacity, he said, to ask the question, well, if God is so merciful and so loving, why is all this sickness and so on and so forth going on in the world? And he said, oh, you have the audacity to ask whether God is doing what he's supposed to do. I need a 40-day fast from you. I looked at him, my eyes wide open. I'm thinking, is he trying to kill me? I have children, I have a family. And he says, you want answers. And you are going to have to submit to what you have to do to get your answers. And started the very first 40-day fast. And this earth is
what did that teach you, the fasting?
First of all, you see, what it does is the physical body it's like a factory. Everything that you put in your body, it got so many hours to clear this out of the space, so many hours to convert this to that. You know that. So that the intelligence in the body doesn't have a whole lot of time to clear that inner space I'm talking about with millions and millions of frames. So when you stop eating, or you eat very little, and for me it was herbal teas.
Yeah, I
No,
think you mentioned like a slice of bread in the morning or something like
not
that.
even bread, because bread has yeast. To this day, I don't eat bread. Bread has yeast, and
Mm.
yeast kind of like it's very difficult to get it out of the system. It was you had to make it. You make it with flour and so on, no yeast. And you have one of those like a little tiny pancake and what have you. Well, that he said, in about an hour, the body will clear it away. And when it's cleared away now, it has time and energy to turn and work on these millions of frames that you have sitting around. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And, but I have to tell you, that first fast, 40-day fast, was hard. It was difficult. There were times when I thought, this old man is trying to kill me.
Yeah.
But
You
I made it.
specifically mentioned, you asked the question, who am I? And
Yes.
he sent sister to your house.
Mm-hmm.
And she took everything off the walls and put it in the middle of the floor. Can you share that? Because that message was amazing.
Yeah. I had this question, working with him now, because I had the question once I came back, who am I? I'm Norma. But before I didn't have these abilities. Do you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
sometimes healing would take place. Not because I stood there and do whatever, but healing would take place. Who am I? So I started to ask this question, who am I? Why am I so different than I was before? Okay. And I took the question to him. And he said, that's a woman's question. You're a woman. He said, if a man brought that question to me, then I can answer it. But you got to go to my wife. And he took me to his wife. And like you said, she came with some other sisters, elders. And they literally stripped my house down, ready for, as if you're going to move. But what was interesting is we had an office in the house. And of course, both me and my husband, we were educated in England. And all the degrees and all the whatever was on the wall. Oh, she had a ball with that. She had to take them down, put them on the floor. And then when we did the walkthrough, she says, and this is particularly who you are not. This is what the world says you are. Time, she says, will tell whether you live up to what these pieces of paper, but you're not there yet. And every room we entered in, she says, I cannot tell you who you are. What I can do for you is show you who you're not.
Mm.
And then from there, you can figure out who you are. And that became the journey of my life. So we have a lot of people who come back as near-death experiencers. And well, life probably takes over and they don't really go into any training or discipline. But I find that it takes discipline to really lift that vibration and connect at a higher level, because we're walking in a very, very, very coarse density, you see. So if we don't develop discipline first, we can't hold on to the delicacy, how delicate that fine, higher level of energy is. What did you get from the book?
So much. I want to talk about your goodbye when you were preparing to come to America. And sister and brother spoke over you and gave you a prophecy. And I thought it was so beautiful. Just the words that was spoken and just what they saw that was ahead of you. And when you got here in America, exactly what you
She said,
experienced.
I experienced.
And then how this near-death experience have taken you in the prisons. And one specific person that you helped on death row. Because if we think about it, right? I mean, you went there, he was going there. So you were trying to get him to prepare spiritually, emotionally for what he was going to experience. And I think we don't often think about hospice for prisoners, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
hospice is preparing the soul for death, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we never think about that for those people, those men and women that have been incarcerated and that, are behind bars or for whatever, they're there for. But I thought that was so beautiful. I just thought that how everything, how your life came full circle, and
Mm-hmm.
that what you went and experienced, you're actually helping the people that are here and about to go there.
Mm-hmm. I learned a lot from 27 years of walking those floors. And one of the things that I learned, and I tried to give this to my fellow Christians, God is in charge, always, and all is going to be well. Because when I came back, I could remember a lot about my experience. And I could remember that I was told what my purpose was, but I couldn't remember what it was. And I think that was deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
It was very deliberate. And I
Mm-hmm.
kept asking, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And brother would say, when you'll find out. And when you find out, you might not be so happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving here in America. This is like 20 years later. And I'm driving on the highway, and the voice in my head said, find a spot and pull over. I came off the highway, found the spot, I pull over, turn off the engine, and I'm sitting there now. And I said, okay, you have my attention. And one word dropped into my head, prison. I said, prison? What do you mean by prison? Am I going to do something and get imprisoned? Are any one of my children going to get into prison? So I drove around and around in this car screaming at God. I don't know what you mean by prison, but I can't go into prisons. I don't know anybody in a prison. And so I finally went to my pastor, whom I had not told I had a near-death experience. And I tell her this, and she says, well, it seems to me like God is asking you to show up. And you're worrying about what will happen when you show up, but God is asking you to show up. So if I were you, I would just show up and see what happens. And it became one of the biggest curves in my life. I used to tell the guys I've learned more from them than I could ever have taught them.
What is something you learned specifically from doing that type of work that you would want people to really know?
Every single human being has got the Spirit of God inside of them. Every single human being, if you show them respect and love, you will be amazed what you will get out of them. The first day getting into a prison is not if you don't have a conviction, it's not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure. Yeah.
And it took about 2 years trying. Finally, I think God came, but I was speaking at Howard University. And the person who directed the program inside of the prison had this project they were attempting to do. And he heard my speech when I talked about compassion and so on and so on and so forth. And when it was over, he stepped forward and he said, what do you do when you're not speaking like this? And I said, never mind what I do for a living. That's what I would like to take into prisons. And he said, Wednesday, new staff entrance, show up. And I did. And the journey began. The very first day they walked me into prison, I started as a volunteer. And they walked me into this prison. Oh my God, you talk about hell on wheels. I mean, people screaming, people fighting, curse words flying all over the place. And I'm going, I can't do this. I cannot do
Yeah.
this.
That's a calling.
Oh, I told God, I can't do this. He didn't pay me no mind. And then I was designated a circle of men. And the journey began. And it moved from that chaotic, hellish situation to the space where nobody cursed around me. And I never asked them to stop because the superintendent of prison says, we can't ask them to stop cursing because that is their way of communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask them to stop cursing, they won't communicate it, and we'll have bigger problems. I never asked them to stop, but after a while I realized they didn't curse when I was around them. And then one day I came in and the superintendent of prisons asked that I report to his office. Well, I was always breaking the rules. So I thought, oh God, I've broken another rule. When I got there, he says, I sit in my office and I know exactly when you're in this building. I say, how so? The cussing stops. And then I realized that some of the older men had taken it upon themselves to coach the younger men. That when she's here, so I asked them, I said, how did you know that it affected me? They said, well, we noticed your body language. So the point that I'm making here is there's good in everybody. The Spirit of God is in each and every one of us, and there is good in every one of us. Now, the circumstances into which we came into the world, how we were raised, the lack of what we were fed, whether spiritually, all that comes into place, but there is hope.
Yeah. The programming, everything that's added to us once our spirit gets here. So the race, the religion, the environment, the parents, everything, we take it as this is who I am. But like you said, when you said I am Norma, everything after I am that's the divinity that you're speaking onto yourself. Yeah. So I thought that your journey was just amazing. Beautiful. I want to talk a little bit about wisdom keepers and rites of passage. One of the things that you do, is to teach family values here in America. Why is that important to you here, specifically in America?
You see, in America, you have a society, some people won't agree with me, that there's a lot of money flowing around here. What the average person lives on here would be considered wealth in another country. And when you grow up under oh my God, poverty, when you grow up under poverty and you're not given good direction, because you see, when you're growing up under poverty, the yoke of poverty, you really need some straight thinking people to guide that little life, see? And if resentment and hurt and pain is the only thing around you, then that's what you gravitate to. You see, that's what you gravitate to. I watched men leave that prison, go back to school, become psychologists, and came back and worked next to me and left me with my mouth open, which was something that sister said when I was leaving. You will do more than we ever did. Remember, she said that. Yeah. You will accomplish more than, yeah. I watched people who told me, no, school is no good, it's just all that, blah, 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 and got motivated to take themselves back to school. It's been a journey. Yeah. It's been a journey that taught me how to raise my children.
Yeah. Which brings me into the rites of passage. I enjoyed reading that so much in your book. Could you talk about what you experienced when you became a young woman, I guess, getting her first menstrual cycle? What type of ceremony did you guys have? And then becoming a mother for the first time?
Ooh, you don't ask small questions, do you?
I think that this is what is missing. I grew up here in America. And, culturally, there's so much going on. Where you're from, were you here, did you come from this place, Africa here? Were you original Native American? It's so much, right? And I think that's important, but also rites of passage, those wisdom nuggets that were handed down orally that were lost.
First of all, when I became a young lady, and I've lost you again. Can you see me?
I could see you. I could see you.
Um, I became a young lady very young. I think I was only 9. And it was my mother and my aunt. And it's very interesting. They take an egg, and they take one egg and they break it and they show you what the inside of the egg looks like. And then they have a boiled egg. And they will crack that open and they will kind of use that to help you understand that there's a great change that's taking place inside of you. You're also told that your womb is the most sacred place on earth.
Yes, I
And
loved
it's
reading
your
that.
responsibility to hold it sacred. One of the things you're also told that energy does not die. They get that across to you. Energy does not die. And they let you know that whatever energy you let in there will stay in there forever. So that if you want your children to be all that you want them to be, you need to be real careful that the energy that creates your children is that of the person who you want to be, their father, and that energy only. Do you understand that? I don't know.
Yes.
She completely, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was that, and then they made me eat the egg, and then they washed my face, and they say from now onwards you will have to see the world through different eyes, which I didn't really understand. I was only 9. You will see the world through different eyes. And both my mother and my aunt, well, it was a very loving interaction. And even though I left it not quite understanding it all, as I grew older, then I was able to, as I grew older, I was able to understand it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about motherhood? Your first child, your first birth?
Oh, my goodness. My first child was a boy. And my mother was so excited. She was beyond words. She was out of control. By the time I left the hospital, the nurse says, you need to take your baby and your mama so that we can get work done here. She was so excited. But when she took me home, she said, well, the medical profession is just finished with you and I'm just about to begin, you know. And then they use a lot of herbs and so on, and they put you in a warm bath. And they get to massage you, and anything that is left inside of there, get it out of there. And when I think about it, my first 2 children, I never had problems with maintaining weight because they make sure that every single clot, everything is pushed out. They massage it out, and then they kind of wrap you. You wrap you tightly. But one of the things that my mother did that I've done with my own children, my first child was a boy, and she took him out of my arms and she said, this is a child that God has given to you and your husband, but he doesn't belong to you. He belongs to the woman who will love him as much as you do, and long after you're gone, will continue to love and take care of him. So that helped me to understand that when I get a daughter-in-law, I have to be excited. When my first son got married here in America, all my friends said they'd never seen a mother that excited when a son gets married, because those were the words that my mother gave to me. And when babies are born, the top of the head, there's an opening there, and you can see it when they breathe. And over a period of time, it will close. So they blew on that spot and they said prayers on that spot. that God will guide him and direct him, etc., etc. But the biggest thing about that was when she said to me, I'd never heard it up until then, she says, he doesn't belong to you. So enjoy him while you have him. But he really belongs to the woman who will hold his heart and will walk with him long after you go. That was
I think that's beautiful. And you also mentioned the cord is a direct link to the prayers for
that's right.
Your child as a mother.
That's right. That's right.
Norma, is there anything you want to share with our listeners from your journey through your life, through your purpose, through your walk, as a mother, as a spiritual being, as an energy being? Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with?
There is hope. Regardless of how it may seem, you read my book and you've read some of the trials and tribulations that I've experienced. I just turned 80. And when I look back now, I have to say to women and young girls listening to this broadcast, when I look back now, I have to laugh. I can't do anything else but laugh at the number of hours that I spent being awake, worrying about this, worrying about that. And it all worked out because God is in charge.
Absolutely.
So being a wisdom keeper on the planet, I feel that my job and my energy goes towards, I work with a lot of elderly people. I worked with girls. I spent 20 years of my life at James Madison University doing a summer program every year that helped them to mature from childhood into womanhood and really be ready for their place in the world. So I've been truly blessed to be able to share that which has worked for me. And I'm just hoping, and I can feel it there. I can see those females and males who got it, they got it, and they are now, even though they may be in other professions, they are now out there doing a lot of what they learned from me, and that pleases me a lot. The legacy I leave behind is those who got it and those who chose to live it. And not everyone will choose that, but those who got it and those who choose to live it, and those who are now, like my youngest son, I have 5 children. My youngest son is the one who has decided that he will follow my footsteps. And he is in psychology and he works with traumatized children.
Wow. Yeah. This is Norma's book, all right, Awakening. Norma, where can everyone get this book?
It's on Amazon. Go up on www.amazon.com and you can purchase either the book or you can purchase the Kindle version. There are also a number of other bookstores that is carrying it.
It was an amazing read. I read it in 2 days. I reached out to Norma because I was literally drawn to her. I listened to another interview that she had and I was drawn to this woman. And I emailed her and she responded like that day. And I was like, okay, yeah, there's something there. And when I first spoke to Norma, we talked for an hour and a half. And there's a lot in her book that I could relate to. There's just so much there. And get the book. You'll enjoy it. If anything, you'll understand that we are all divine. There's a divine oneness that connects us all here. And that's what this podcast is about, to awaken everyone to what's already within you. It's already within. Any answers we need, any questions we have, it's already within us. We just need to go within. And there is a process. There is a journey. Like Norma said, the journey begins and you have to put in the work. But the teachers will appear when the student is ready, for sure.
That's correct. That's correct. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a wonderful hour. And
yes.
I hope that our paths will cross again sometime in the future.
We will. One last thing, Norma, before I end. Norma married and her love of her life later in life. And her and I talked about that, about twin flames. Could you just share a little bit about that, Norma?
Oh dear, oh dear. You know, when we keep coming to Earth, and we're mastering memory and so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
it actually is like once in every 3,000 years, the soul on its way down split into two halves and enters two different bodies. And so those two bodies are going to be attracted to each other because they are a part of the whole. And when that happens, you have a perfect match. And for me, I found that maybe I had to go through all the trials and tribulations that I went through before so that I can learn some things. Everybody's searching for their twin flame. Not everybody's got a twin flame here on Earth. How it works is normally when one is down here, the other one is above, and the other one becomes the main guide. But every now and again in the history of the life of twin flames, when the soul on the way down splits in two, and it's always male and will enter a male body and a female body. They are what is called soulmates. Soulmates can be of the same sex, but twin flames are always male and female. And when you find that person, you've got a we can speak for each other. I remember us going to a restaurant to talk to an editor, actually. And my husband turned and ordered a meal. You see, he ordered a meal. And the gentleman looked at him and he says, "But you didn't ask her what she wants." And my husband said, "I didn't need to." And he didn't need to.
He eats this all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful, Norma. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I see you. Definitely.
You got something from the book, didn't you?
I've had that within me before the book,
Oh,
but I
good.
could definitely appreciate that in the book as confirming everything as well, that I'm on a journey too as
That's
well.
right. And
So
God bless you on your journey. Open up your heart. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You've got spirit guides behind you. You have a spirit guardian behind you. Stay close to Almighty God because He is the source of all creation. And you'll be just fine. God
that's
bless.
right. Thank you. All right, guys, take care. Get the book, all right? Awakening. Reverend Dr. Norma Edwards, okay? Make sure you reach out to Norma like I did if you have any questions or if you just want to tap into her wisdom, because she has it. She's a wisdom keeper. So we appreciate you guys. As always, this podcast is inspired by love, God, relationships, spirituality, justice, culture, family, children, finances, freedom, universal principles, health, education, masculine and feminine energies, music, and all things of the heart and soul. We appreciate you guys. This is how we align the heart and the mind for perfect alignment. Take care, guys. Thanks, Norma.
Thank you.